Hi, hello, and welcome back to the Night Sky Knitting channel. My name is Rachel, I am your host, and I am a knitter based out of Ottawa, Canada. This channel is my chatty outlet to talk all things knitting with occasional guest appearances by other crafts, and it's April. And today is a very special episode. It is my Everything I Knit in my second year of knitting special. Bum, ba, bum. This has been a long time coming. This should have been up, well, I shouldn't use that kind of language. My knitiversary, my Knitting Intensely and Obsessively anniversary would be the first or second week of February. However, for a variety of reasons I will not bore you with today, this video has not happened until now. I am very happy to be filming it, however, and before sitting down to film, I did some quick counting. And overall, in sort of 2022, but more accurately February to February, I knit 29 things for myself, and I think 11 or 12 of those are garments, and 22 gifts for other people. The most common gift I gave to other people were pairs of socks, and then slowly starting to be overtaken by mittens once I got sick of knitting socks and started making everybody mitts instead. This video will not be showing you all of those things, even a little bit, because all of those 22 gifts have been given away, and I'm not gonna, if I've tried to show and discuss with my chatty self at length everything I made, this video would be 7 hours long, and I don't have the storage for that, and you don't have the time for that. So instead we're going to be looking at garments only. But I like thinking about these bigger statistics and reflecting on my year as a whole. Is there anything else I want to add? I think my overall reflections on my second year of knitting is this is when I really started to hit my stride and start to make garments that I feel like are pretty accurate to what I wanted, that fit my lifestyle, and that I really like and reach for a lot. There are a few, or actually most of the garments I made in my first year I still wear, but a lot of the garments I made in my second year I have to stop myself from wearing too much. Does that make sense as a distinction between different things? I think I started to, through trial and error from my first year, understand what I like, what I gravitate towards, what kinds of fabrics and fits and colors work for me, and I got to reap the benefits of that in my second year. And I think a lot of my most favorite garments I've made were in this past year as opposed to my first year. But I still love those things nonetheless. This has been a year of high highs and low lows when it comes to my knitting. I say that some of my absolute winners have been in the last year, but also some of the ones that I've given away or just completely frogged have also been in the last year, compared to my first year of knitting where I didn't really give away anything and I still have everything and I still wear them, just less. Other things, I knit my first cardigan, I did my first cabled garment, I learned how to do 3-color work, and I think expanded my skill base in a bunch of techniques for knitting in my second year of knitting. I started to play around with drafting things for just myself as opposed to relying on patterns. I came up with a colorwork chart and knit cute little colorwork socks from my own brain, as well as a dicky collar type neck warmer thing. And yeah, okay. So I think those are my broader, bigger notes and observation. And so maybe it's time I just start showing you some stuff. The first thing I finished, I think also broad parameters for this video, everything I knit in my second year of knitting, if I finished it in my second year of knitting, things that were ongoing but had not been completed by the time I hit the second week of February are not included in this, and things that I worked on mostly in my first year but I finished in my second year are included in this. So to give you an idea of what sort of rules I used, but this is for fun, it's not science. This is for entertainment purposes only. A couple of the yarns in this I received as like a part of a sponsorship, and I will note those in the description box below. I will do my best to include all patterns and yarns if I can remember or find them in the description box below, as well as my measurements at the very bottom, so you know what kind of body you're looking at. However, all of the details are fuzzy since it's been over a year since I've finished some of these. But the first, and this will be in rough chronological order, but again, I don't keep amazing records, and we're just going to do our best. First thing I finished is actually in my lap, prepared. It's the Snowy Forest sweater by Midori Hirose. It is this cable circular yoke sweater with these antler cables and then these other cables, and I knit this in an old, at that time, Yarn for Me that I don't always want to promote because I'm not sure about the business practices of that company. I got this on sale after I think some things came out about that company and I was still too new to knitting to really know. I really like this, however. It's a worsted weight sweater. I modified it a lot and then wasn't happy with my modifications, but then this is one that sat in storage, and after a summer of not really wearing it, I thought that I maybe wanted to frog this back until I tried it on again and realized I actually do love this. I love the color, I love the fabric, I love these cables, and I remember having a lot of fun making this too. I, for the first time, experimented with adding my own short rows. You can see here I did maybe like 2, and then I did a couple more at the end, which you can't really see after this cable pattern, to try and raise the back a bit more because this pattern doesn't have that to begin with. I think because it's meant to be a very wide boat neck with a chunkier rib collar than this, and because I knit this a lot more fitted, it was going to be closer to my neck and I wanted to raise the back, and it absolutely did help. And I was proud of myself for being able to do that, even though, as you can see, this is truly the most minimal of shaping possible. So, I don't know, I'll take the win, and I think that past Rachel still deserves that. And I actually wore this quite a bit this winter, and I'm really glad that I didn't frog it, and I tried it on before deciding that it was a failure, because I wear this to the office a lot, or to slightly more formal settings, and sometimes also just out and about. I really like it. I'm going to try it on for you guys now. This sweater is meant to be worn with a lot more positive ease, but I decided to change the gauge. I still don't understand my thought process in that one, and knit the same size that I would have, even though I changed the gauge, and it resulted in a much more fitted sweater. But I really like it. I think it's a good, can wear it to coffee, can wear it to the office for my office. I think it toes that line very well. I really, really like this color, this sort of browny purple. It goes with a lot in my wardrobe, and I'm happy that I picked it. The bind-offs don't match because I did a tubular bind-off. This is woven in. Why didn't I trim it? Okay, I'll trim that later. I did a tubular bind-off and then thought that it was flaring out before blocking, so I did a regular stretchy bind-off on this side, but then left the longest of strings in order to go back and do a tubular bind-off if I decided that it actually did look better, and it does, and I never went back. So anytime I put this on or off, I find this long tail that I've just been too lazy to do anything with, and when my friends and I are changing at the gym, they do tease me for it, absolutely deservedly so. I'm going to stand up and show you, but it's a little bit cropped. Here are my hip bones, and here's where this sweater sits. I put a yoga mat down to avoid having the creakiest floor as possible, and I don't know if it's working. But you can also see my glorious bathrobe. There we go, now it's gone. It's classic, it's warm, it's comfortable, I really like the fit. I recommend this pattern, I wear it a lot. I also think that there are quite a few things I thought that I didn't like the fit of back when my hair was still awkwardly growing out from being very short, and I didn't feel like myself in, and I find that I feel like myself in this sweater now that my hair is where it was before. So that was an interesting observation. There were a few garments that I thought I didn't like as much, and it turns out I needed my hair back. It was a very interesting observation. Come autumn this year, when my hair was back to my shoulders and I was pulling all these things out of storage and trying them on again for the first time, a lot of garments that I thought made me look a little matronly or didn't make me feel like me were totally fine, and I like and I wear a lot now that my hair is back to how it is when I picture myself in my head. So I thought that was interesting to learn about myself. Yeah, the only thing I don't love about this sweater is that because all the cables and weight are up on this yoke, and I knit it more fitted than is recommended. Often if I like raise my arms and then put them down, you have this bunching right here. And it's really easy to tug and fix. I've also noticed that that has lessened over time with washing and wearing it, as wool naturally relaxes a little bit and grows a little bit, but up and then bunching, up and then bunching. That's okay. I just tug it and we're fine. So yeah, this is the Snowy Forest sweater by Midori Hirose. I finished this at the very beginning of my second year of knitting, and overall I consider it to be a winner. I was going through a period of just not weaving in my ends last year, which okay, Rachel, be lazy, but now it makes it a little bit easier to find the fronts of a lot of my sweaters, which I do appreciate. This is the Fortune sweater by Petite Knit. I knit this in one strand of drops brushed alpaca silk in the color Sage, and this is one of my top 3 sweaters, maybe garments, that I've made for myself. Full stop, period, hands down. This time last year I released a video. Oh, I think something else that's funny is that everything that you see in this video you will have seen in a past podcast if you go back. Unlike my first one where I started making things and then started filming, so there were a few surprises, but not here. So yeah, this time last year I filmed a video called Ode to the Fortune sweater. My feelings have not changed on it since. So I'll stand up and show you. I knit the first size, and this is not a size inclusive pattern. The Snowy Forest it's graded from something like a 28 to I want to say a 66 inch bust, but I know it's quite an inclusive range. This one only goes up to a 2 or a 3XL. I know Petite Knit has pledged to update her size range, so I don't know about that. The only thing about this is that, as you can see, the collar has flared out, and I mean to at some point put an elastic, and then I think it'll look again and it'll be pretty and I'll be very happy. It is super duper lightweight. I think this whole garment weighs something like 108 grams. I didn't have to use a lot of it, and drops brushed alpaca silk is a very budget option. So this original pattern calls for 2 strands of mohair held together, which would be very pricey and also a little bit more translucent than I would want in a sweater. But this is pretty opaque. I knit it I went down a needle size and got gauge, and yeah, I don't think you can really see what I'm wearing underneath. And I think each ball cost something like $6 Canadian, so this was overall, and I had to use 5 balls, but had most of that last one left over. I think this was something like a $35 Canadian project, and I love it, and it's one of my favorite sweaters. I wear it a lot in the spring and the fall and on cool summer nights. It is not a fully Canadian winter appropriate sweater. Wind goes through it and it doesn't keep me as warm as some of my 100% wool sweaters, but it's so great for this time of year. Sometimes I wear a wool tank top underneath, like my ripple bralette, which is somewhere in the pile nearby. And I'm very, very comfortable and temperature regulated, but I don't wear this in December and January and February, if that makes sense. So I still love it, and I still have plans to knit another one, but the yarn that I was going to use for that is currently in the freezer because of the beetles. So fingers crossed it survives, but I would want to knit another one in gray. I find this silhouette to be just kind of my perfect silhouette. I did do a bind off too tight. Still haven't gone back and fixed that. This has been a fun experiment in seeing all the things I have not fixed, but I love the sleeves, I love the shoulders, and I often, when I'm knitting things in a DK weight or that are meant to have around the same amount of ease, I often pull this out and compare whips to this project as my barometer for, is this fit going to be what I like? That is how much I love this. Easily one of my top 3 sweaters, potentially one of my top 3 knit garments of all time. I highly recommend this pattern, and I recommend this yarn for doing it as well. So yeah, Ode to the Fortune sweater part 2, I still love it. Around when I finished my Fortune sweater, I think it was this time last year, because I was wearing this to the library to study for finals, and I'm currently filming this video as a break for writing my final papers. I also knit the Bina V-neck sweater by Gregoria Fibers in Drops Air in the color white. And I wore it a bit in the summer, but the fit was always a little off. And I actually find Drops Air to be kind of scratchy in my hand, and if I press it against my cheek, it feels like air. It's so soft, it's like a cloud. It's absolutely glorious. But I find, not this one, but many other alpaca fibers or alpaca yarns, I find both very soft and very itchy. Whereas a lot of wools I don't find soft but don't irritate my skin. And the fit was a little bit off. I was working off gauge and made some modifications, but there weren't any short row shaping to raise the back or the shoulders to make it fit better. And it just kind of hit at an awkward length for me. And the ease was kind of strange on me, so I ended up giving that away to a friend. But this time last year, I also knit the Bina. And that's kind of what I mean by some very high highs and some very low lows, as in I gave away a sweater. But speaking of the ripple bralette that I wear underneath this sometimes as a very lightweight way to stay warm, this is what it looks like. And I really liked this pattern, except I did have to lengthen it quite a bit compared to the pattern recommended length, because the thing about rib is that it stretches and then you lose that vertical height. And I used the Love Stitch fibers in a one-of-a-kind oopsie skein that I got for a reduced price to make this. I think it's 75-25 non-superwash wool and nylon. It's meant to be a sock yarn, and I did later knit a pair of socks with it, but I used it as a bralette. And I get a lot of questions about knitting bralettes. No, they're not supportive at all. I call it a bralette because the pattern calls it a bralette. I use it as an undershirt or a base layer in the winter underneath either store-bought sweaters that aren't as warm, or underneath something like this that isn't as warm, because I find this to be a good combination of keeping my core temperature like well regulated and warm in the cold, but still having the ventilation of being a strappy triangle cup top. And then in the spring, I might wear this out for like a drink or something with a cardigan. But I absolutely do not wear this in the summer. It'd be way too hot, and I am a sweaty person. And also, I don't wear this for support. I wear this as a base layer or for comfort. I find that it kind of brings them in a little bit. That absolutely does not lift. Does that make sense? Because people, whenever I talk about these, do ask. I also do not have a particularly large chest, but when I do wear this as a top out, I'm typically wearing a bra underneath. Also for the moments where I'm feeling more modest. While I'm here and I remember, and we're going off schedule right now, but before this gets buried under the pile of knits, I ended up later on in the summer knitting another sort of undershirt bralette type thing to fit the same need in my wardrobe. And this is a heavily modified Summer Secret crop by Jessie May that I used Trailhead Yarns Appalachian Trail to knit in the color Unicorn Tears. And I think it's a 40% nylon, 60% cotton blend with these really pretty speckles. I got it from Yarns Untangled in Toronto, and I roughly followed the instructions for Jessie May's pattern, which came out of the strap where I tucked in the tail after weaving it in. I roughly followed the pattern instructions or the stitch counts for the shaping at the front for this top bit, but I knit it at a much, much tighter gauge, and I think I was somewhere in between the stitch counts for 2 sizes and 3 sizes up from what's recommended for me, because a lot of Jessie May's patterns use a very loose gauge, and I like that sometimes, but I didn't want that for this. And I wear this again as usually an undershirt. I don't think I finished this in time to wear it as a top in the summer. I think I maybe would because it's pretty opaque. and that cotton elastic content makes it feel absolutely weightless against my skin. It's quite unintrusive. It feels absolutely neutral and very, very comfortable, but I wear this so much as, again, a base layer underneath my wool sweaters that are ever so slightly, or more than ever so slightly, irritating against my chest. Because this has a higher neck, so it comes up to basically here and then protects me from wool or mohair or alpaca, because I do, unfortunately, despite my best efforts, have sensitive skin to a lot of animal fibers, but I'm not willing to give them up. I have another skein of that Appalachian Trail yarns in a gray to knit, hopefully 2, but maybe 1 and a bit. 1 and a much shorter one of those tops again this summer, because I find them really useful. So yeah, I like also knitting undershirts. I find them really good for my life and my wardrobe when I maybe don't want to wear a t-shirt or a blouse underneath one of my sweaters, or it's a sweater like this where a t-shirt kind of wouldn't fit. And it's spring. But I have, as of late, been knitting sweaters with more positive ease, so I can just wear a regular shirt underneath, and that's been really nice too. Okay, so at this point, something else that characterized this past year of knitting is I did a lot more knitting in the first half of the year, or my knitting year, from February to August than I did in the second half from August onwards, because of just my schedule. I was still in school full-time and working part-time, almost entirely remotely last winter. My work was online. I had a lot of Zoom calls, meetings, and classes that I could knit throughout because they were usually more seminar style than lectures where I had to take a lot of notes. And then my job up until summer was mostly remote too. I would come in sometimes, and then that amount of coming in gradually increased over the year. But then I would be able to knit during meetings, whereas that's not really the case anymore. And so as a result, I have a lot more summer garments than I do, I think, sweaters towards the second half of the year. Because back when I had a lot more time to knit, I was focused on summer things. Also, and I've said this before a million times, but my summer wardrobe for my current point in life and my current body leaves a lot to be desired. There are quite a few holes in my summer wardrobe for clothing I would like to wear. Most of it is rather torn or doesn't fit or kind of stained because I've had it for upwards of 10 years. And I like to use my knitting to replace those items that need to be retired or turned into rags or given away, because I like making my own clothes and I like being able to knit in the summer. I don't find that I have a big drop off of my knitting mojo in the summer, but it's way too warm for me to be working with the majority of animal or protein fibers. And yeah, so I'm very happy with the summer things I knit this year, for the most part. But the first of them, which is one of the ones that I'm less happy with, is the Riley tee by Rachel Kurihara. And it's not a fault of the pattern. I quite like the pattern. I think I don't know. This neckline is still weirdly puffy. This folded over neckline. I'm wondering if I need to unpick it and then sew it down another stitch lower. And I ran out of yarn somehow, despite having done appropriate calculations and thought I had quite a bit left over. Like, even my swatch is in here. And then I just kind of never got around to folding down this hem. Every hem in this collar and hem is folded over as opposed to ribbed, which is a look I really quite like, but I ran out of yarn, so I just didn't at the bottom, so I think I might do that. I think that will be one of my projects, is to make this workable for me, because I love the color, and I really like this twisted rib saddle shoulder, and this is a good transition garment because it's I want to say 80% wool, 20% cotton. Or maybe it's a 70-30, but I think it's 80-20. This is Green Mountain Spinnery Cotton Comfort. That's the yarn base in the color mint. I love the color. With a smart pair of trousers, this is work appropriate for my office on more casual days. Ooh. All of this pulling garments on and off is starting to affect the claw clip stitch I had, but oh, and of course I did that just in time to make it harder to see the neckline. So you can see it's a t-shirt. It's a pretty standard drop shoulder t-shirt in a pretty color. It has this really nice drop shoulder design. You have sleeve cap shaping, which really I think helps with the overall look as opposed to having a more flared out sleeve. It's a pretty casual, classic look. I like it. I think this shrunk a little bit in the wash during anti-beetle actions, but if I finally went ahead and sewed it, I think it would be cute. I just haven't done that. And looking at it now, I'm wondering if it's worth rehabilitating by fixing this collar and sewing down the hem, or if I should frog this and use the yarn for something else, like a cardigan, but I don't have enough for a full-on cardigan. I mean, I could order some more from Green Mountain Spinnery and then alternate to avoid having two obviously different dye lots or like intentionally do a subtle stripe. I think I'm thinking cardigan because the Ozetta Field Day cardigan, as opposed to the Field Day jacket, which I was wearing at the beginning of this video and we'll talk about soon, is knit in a DK weight yarn that I think is very similar in content to this Cotton Comfort, and I think this would be really nice as a cardigan and I could use that pattern, but I don't know. Tell me what you guys think. I think this could be cute still, but it's also rumpled because all my summer garments are rumpled right now because they've been in storage, but yeah. I don't know if I would still wear this to the office, but I maybe would wear this to sit in the park with my friends or go bird watching. I have no grudge against this pattern, but I do think it needs some work to make it something I reach for. And this was coming at the tail end of a series of drop shoulder constructions for me, one after the other. And so by the time I got to this, I was just very, very sick of drop shoulder or saddle shoulder constructions. And I think I was rushing and maybe a little bit over this. So that's part of the reason why I didn't go back and fix this neckline. And I didn't go and sew this down. I think I had a high level of fatigue and I just wanted this to be in the basically done but somehow still in timeout corner. But if you like it, I recommend the pattern. Like, this is so cute and sporty, and I recommend this yarn. It was so much fun to knit with. It slid really well. It feels really good in my hands. I really enjoyed knitting with it, and it blocked out beautifully and did soften with wear, but I do think this would be too hot to wear with the 80% wool in 30-degree weather in July in humidity. But because it's woolen spun and you have that cotton content, it's very lightweight, and I think it would be just beautiful for spring. So I should bump this up the list of things to fix. If you guys have any recommendations for what to do about this, let me know. And from there, we have another one of the patterns or projects I consider to be 10 out of 10, an absolute winner from this past year. And it is my As Friends tank by Jessie May Martinson of Jessie Made Designs, which I knit in Hobie Baby Soft Organic, not the midi weight, the fingering weight. In, what color is this? This is what it looks like. It's very cropped and very flowy, has a folded hem, and then it's just a straight tank top with like a little bit of triangle shaping and straps. And then there's ever so slight little triangles at the back too, which is normally a pet peeve of mine in garments. I don't know why they do triangle shaping at the back to hide our scandalous lower shoulder blade, but because it's not the same, I like it as a design feature in this. And I lived in this all summer. If I was working from home and I didn't have any Zoom calls, I'd be wearing this. Running to pick up groceries, I'd be wearing this. Sitting out in the park, I'd be wearing this. I have enough to knit a second one, and I will do so to look as close to this one as possible because I'm worried about wearing this one out. I love the color. I love the fit. This is one of my favorite summer yarns. It was given to me as part of a sponsorship to do a review of their summer yarns video. However, I'd worked with it before and knew that I liked it going in, and I stand by this as a really, really solid summer yarn option. It's 100% organic cotton, GOTS certified, comes in a variety of colors. This video is not sponsored. I just genuinely love this yarn, and I think I can say it's my favorite of all of Hobie's yarns. But it also comes in a midi weight, which is what they call their sport to DK weight cotton yarn, and apparently it's the same yarn as this one, but I like this one more, and I have a garment in that one that I'll show you in a bit. I love it. For me, Jessie May, in my first 2 years of knitting, was very much the queen of the summer garment. It just fits my style, and I find them really easy to modify in order to create other basics for myself, and I'm quite devoted to her summer patterns, but this one I love. It's easy breezy, and it makes me happy. It makes me feel comfortable in hot weather, and I will return to this as a basic hopefully this summer, but I have so many summer knitting plans that we'll see. It's also pretty beginner friendly, and it's very basic. You're functionally knitting a stockinette tube up until you start shaping for the front, back, and doing these. So if you like mindless stockinette, I think this is a winner for you. And I just think it's a great basic, and in my opinion, a highly underrated Jessie May pattern. So this is the As Friends tank. It goes along with the Look at My Holes crop by James N. Watts. The whole thing being Look at My Holes as Friends, tee-hee ha-ha. And the Look at My Holes has been getting a lot of attention in the past year. I know Kat of Heather and Hops has knit a bunch. I know if I remember correctly, I think I saw on Instagram earlier today that Emily of High Fiber Knits finished hers, and it looks so good and makes me want to make one. But guys, don't sleep on its sibling, the As Friends tank. It's great. It's so nice. And it's made with summer fibers in mind, and by that I mean plant fibers. I see a lot of summer tops, I guess I mean tank tops or camisoles or sleeveless tops that are made in wool or cashmere or predominantly those fibers, and it makes me nervous sometimes to knit those because I simply cannot tolerate 100% wool close to my body in a camisole in the summer months. And so I want to make those patterns, but I know that it won't behave the same in a plant yarn versus a wool or animal fiber yarn. And so I really appreciate that this was made with, I think it's either a cotton or a cotton linen blend. So I could look at it and see, okay, I'm going to be able to get that drape without having to really modify and without having to stress about it. And that's true for a lot of, I think, James N. Watts, Park Williams, Jessie May summer designs, which, woohoo, great, works for me in North America where it gets swampy. After I finished that top, I loved it, but I was working full time. It was routinely upwards of 25 degrees plus the humidity in Ottawa. And I was finding that I felt kind of exposed on all my video calls when I would join Teams meetings in my house, which is unair conditioned, in a little tank top, because all they would see is like this up. And then all you could see was a tiny little strap, and there wasn't a lot of coverage, and I felt kind of exposed and a little unprofessional. And I know that none of my coworkers noticed or cared, but when you're at work, especially when I was starting a new job, I wanted to make a good first impression, and I wanted to feel secure and not having to worry about my appearance. I wanted to just be able to type. and talk. And so that led me to the Drinks on the Patio top, which is what I'm wearing now, by Shanna K. Salmon, which is a pattern, I say this every time, recommended to me when I did my 1,000 subscriber giveaway, and I asked everybody to suggest an underrated pattern or designer. This was one of them. I wholeheartedly agree. It's a great top. I've actually knit two, and I'll show you the second one in a minute. I knit this in Wool and the Gang Shiny Happy Cotton in their mellow mauve and duck egg blue. I only had one ball of the blue, so I cast on with a contrast hem from the mauve that I had left over that I knew I would be color blocking with, so that it looked intentional and not, well, I hope it looks intentional and not like I was going to run out of yarn. And then I knit until I ran out of the blue, followed the pattern, and then carried on with the mauve. And I love it. You can't tell that it's color blocked when I'm on a Zoom call. It's fun, it's summery. I like the color block. This is amongst the bolder of the color choices I make with my knitting, and it's perfect. I find it to be really wearable. I did leave a little bit of the blue to do the neckline with, to really hammer home this was intentional, haha. It didn't, but then I started with it, and you have an I-cord neck and I-cord arm edgings, and it looked a little bit too cartoonish, so I kept with the mauve instead. And I wore this for a lot of summer. It's a worsted weight pattern for a tank top. And that means it knits up very, very quickly, which is also something I was looking for when we hit June, July, because I really had no summer clothes I wanted to wear, but I did have summer yarns, and I'm obsessed with knitting, so I wanted to make things myself, but time was kind of the essence, because summers are hot in Canada, but they're not long. So this was born. It's not super bra friendly, as you can see. This is poking out, but it is size inclusive. It's fast. It's a great beginner pattern, to the point where one of my friends took up knitting and knit this as one of her first ever things. A, because she loved it, because I met them for drinks on a patio wearing it and she thought it was nice, and B, because it's very, very beginner friendly. As you can see, it's just stockinette and ribbing with a little bit of I-cord, and I like it. The thing is because it's cotton and it's a worsted weight, cotton is a heavy fiber. So whenever I pick one of these up on a hot summer morning, I don't want to wear it because I think it's going to, again, you can see this is very creased from being in a box. I think that they're going to be way too warm because they're heavy and they feel really hefty. And then I put it on my body and I'm super comfortable. It's not as lightweight or as temperature regulating and cooling as a store-bought cobweb thread knit cotton t-shirt, but I'm okay with that. I still find them to be super wearable and they make me really happy. And I can wear them with a bra, as you can see, and sometimes I wear them braless, and that also is a thick enough fabric and opaque enough with the gauge and thick enough with the worsted cotton that I find it to be still rather secure. This is my second one. I knit this one in Lion brand Pima cotton in the color either Pebble or Stone, but it would be very obvious if you were to look up the options which one it was. And it's a little bit of a thinner yarn, so this one ended up being tighter because I knit it without any modifications from my Wool and the Gang Shiny Happy Cotton, which is more of an Aran weight, and this is a worsted. So you can see, I think, a little bit how the stitches are tugging a bit, and it's just more fitted, but it's also lighter weight and a little bit more breathable. I knit this because I loved my first one so much. I wanted a second in a neutral, and last year my go-to neutral was gray. That's common in my life. Since then I've started leaning in a little bit more towards beiges, but I love gray. I think it's so easy to wear. Good neutral, I feel comfortable in it. So here's the second one. I like it. I wanted another option of these tops. They're super fast, and I knit this entire body, all of this stockinette, in one 5-hour car ride, maybe even 4 hours. Nathan and his dad were driving me back to Ottawa from Algonquin Park, and that's how long it took. And if I needed to. I know I could pump out another one of these pretty quickly, but I'm hopefully all my summer knitting plans will be enough to fill what I need for my summer wardrobe, and they'll be more lightweight and a little bit more varied in silhouettes and types of tops. Yeah, I love this. This was also quite a budget project. Lion Brand Pima Cotton is another top tier summer yarn in my opinion, and it's not expensive. I got this from Knit-O-Matic. I don't know if they're going to carry it again this year. I hope that they do, and I think that they might, because I was talking to the owner and she said they sold out really quickly the first time. I used up almost all of 2 balls of this for either the second or the third size, and I think each ball was $7 or $8, so, or $6.50. Maybe on sale I got it. So this was, I think, under $15 Canadian worth of yarn, plus the pattern cost, which I'd already paid to get it the first time, to knit my first version. So another great project, good for beginners, fast, easy, very wearable, size inclusive, and can be made well with budget yarns. I'm pretty sure Lion Brand Pima Cotton is one of the recommended or sample yarns for this pattern to begin with, which might have been why I felt really confident going for it as well, and knitting it in cotton. My second last summer garment, I think, is the very creased Me Oh My tee by Park Williams that I knit in Hobie Baby Organic Cotton Midi, the sport weight. And I think the color mauve or soft pink, which I don't think suits me as a color. I think it's too warm toned and makes me look a little sallow. However, I still wear this. Boo hiss, bad Rachel. You just tuck that back in. I wore this a lot. It took me a long time to make because it was just stockinette and more stockinette and more stockinette. It also came out looser with a lot more positive ease than I think I planned. And I knit, even though I knit a gauge swatch, so cotton grows, I guess. And I did once more sleeve cap shaping that I really think makes this suit me a lot more. I don't like it when t-shirts flare out like this for the sleeve. I like a more fitted sleeve cap. I wore this a lot. I really, I know I keep saying that, but it's true that the summer garments I've shown you in the last few minutes were indeed the bulk of what I wore last summer. The rest of my summer stuff, I mean, I have a bunch of sundresses that I would wear a lot. When I wanted to wear a top and a skirt, or a top and my shorts, it would be these ones. Again, this is one that when I put on, when I hold in my hands, I think, oh, that's quite heavy. I don't know if I want to wear that when it's hot, and I put it on and it's fine. I get a little bit more warm in this than I do my store-bought cotton t-shirts that are not hand knit, but not to a point where it's problematic. I just notice it a little bit. This is another size inclusive one that's knit in a cotton yarn, so I felt comfortable casting it on with just a swatch and not having to stress about making modifications based on fiber content. And it made me excited to knit more of Park Williams designs in the future because it was super clear, it was super easy to follow, it was well written, I didn't find any mistakes, and I like the final object, and it's knit bottom up, which I'm a lot less comfortable with, but still willing to do. And I feel like I have to have a lot more trust in the designer when I'm knitting bottom up than I am when I knit top down, because I find it easier to see where I might need to make modifications knitting top down, and Park Williams did not lead me astray. I don't think I have major complaints with my summer garment projects from this past year, minus the things that I already said about the Rachel. Nope, I'm Rachel. The Riley tee, and even then I don't think those were deal breakers, just things to keep in mind. So, next / last on the summer knitting tour, my Cumulus blouse, heavily modified by Petite Knit, which I knit in Noro Kakigori, whatever the blue one is. This is heavily modified. I discussed this at length in, I think, my October podcast, because I think I actually knit this in September and October, which was nice because then I spent a couple weeks in Florida and I was able to wear this and it was perfect for the weather. I loved this yarn a lot more than I thought that I would. I don't think I would it's not high on my list of things to make another garment with because the colors are so out there, but it was at a time when A, this was on sale, and B, I really wanted something bright to work with. But it's a thick and thin single ply yarn. It's a blend of cotton, linen, a small amount of silk, I think rayon, and maybe nylon. It has this beautiful effect. It's super, super soft and comfortable, but it's thick and thin, and it's at a thinner weight than the 2 strands of mohair that the Cumulus blouse calls for. So I knit this, I think I knit between the size I was supposed to and the size up at a tighter gauge to get a more sturdier fabric. And I'm really, really happy with it. I also didn't knit the full length, the 3/4 length balloon sleeves because I didn't have enough yarn and I also didn't want to. I knit these kind of like t-shirt sleeves with some decreases until I ran out of yarn, and I did some decreasing on the body as my typical trick to squeeze more yarn out of a limited quantity to get the garment that I want, which normally works for me but sometimes really doesn't. Knitting this made me then buy yarn to knit a Cumulus tee because I functionally achieved the finished product of a Cumulus tee using modifications to the Cumulus blouse pattern, but this showed me that I do like this type of V. Longer short sleeves, this kind of tapered body, and so if it survives the trip to the freezer after a visit from the Beatles, I will be using some gray wild silk I got from Color Mart to knit myself a Cumulus tee, if I'm brave enough to do that, because it is a fingering weight project. But I like it, and I'm looking forward to being able to wear this more soon. It's super comfy. It was a lot of fun to make. Felt really fast, probably because it's kind of cropped. Here's my belly button, and it stops at my belly button, and it's a DK weight, so yeah, it works. I don't know if I don't have any problems with the Cumulus blouse, but I like the Cumulus tee look more. But if you want to knit the Cumulus tee but at a DK weight gauge, the Cumulus blouse works. Okay, now we're back to wearing the field day cardigan, and when I say we're, I mean I am. This I started this time last year in April of 2022 and finished in, I want to say late August, early September. Not because it's not a good pattern. It's a good pattern, and I really like this yarn. It was just way too hot for me to be working on for the summer. And it was funny, there would be like a thunderstorm or something, or for whatever reason, a drop in temperature, and I would drop whatever I was doing to work on this for a couple hours whenever the temperatures allowed for me to handle woolen spun worsted weight wool, which is not wildly soft, because I just couldn't stand to have this anywhere near me for most of the summer, but I wanted this cardigan so badly and I really enjoyed the pattern. But this is the Field Day jacket by Ozetta Knitwear. I made it in Green Mountain Spinnery weekend wool in the color fawn, and I knit the second size. I cropped it. It's supposed to have a 4th buttonhole and go down to, I think, here. And I followed the modifications of one of the testers to only have it be 3, because that just is what I wanted. I also knit, as you can see, shorter sleeves. Not as much as it makes it seem. When I first blocked it, the sleeves were about here, and they have shrunk with time. I wonder if they felt it a little bit because this is a woolen spun yarn, and I think those are more prone to felting. But they are now kind of bracelet length sleeves, and they didn't start out that way. But this is one of my most worn garments of the past year. I think it would probably be, not in this order, but the As Friends tank, this cardigan, and my Fortune sweater are probably my top 3 garments of the year. I love it. I wear it as an actual jacket. For a lot of the fall after I finish this, I'd pop this on during those days where the wind is cold but the sun is bright, or the temperature varies a lot from hour to hour, as actual outerwear. I wear it with turtlenecks when it's cold in the winter, and I've been wearing it a lot again now that it's spring, to the point where, because it's kind of big and my dresser is small, but this doesn't even really go in the dresser. It sits on the back of my desk chair at all times where I can see it and feel the comfort of knowing that my favorite cardigan is nearby. I also got this yarn at a steep discount because there were some product defects. I mercifully did not actually encounter many skeins with them. There were some bits that were really thick and thin, but I tended to only find that at moments where I could either cut it out or it was in the rib or something of a hem and you can barely tell. I've washed this once or twice, I think twice, since finishing it, not including blocking, and I wear it, again, it's one of my most worn garments, and I feel like it's held up pretty well, but you can see there's pilling, there's rumpling, and it's due for another wash and shave soon. I'd also like to say, normally this yarn is not very budget friendly, but I think it's funny that my 3 favorite garments of this year, also my 4th favorite, the lakes, were all some of my least expensive projects. And I don't know if that's because I feel more comfortable wearing things that aren't super expensive, made of super expensive yarns, or what, but my Fortune sweater, my As Friends tank, this, and my Lakes pullover were all some of my less expensive projects, and they're my favorites and I wear them all the time. But here it is. These buttons I got from Yarns Untangled in Toronto. They're coconut shell. I like them. And also, at one point in time, I was picking up my knitting pillow from someone on Buy Nothing here in Ottawa. And when I say knitting pillow, I mean it's a nursing pillow someone was giving away on the recommendation of many commenters when I routinely talk about how this is bad for my posture, all the knitting I do. I was having a really beautiful September day. It was a Saturday. I was wearing this cardigan and I spilled a mocha all over it, like down the front. You know, coffee and chocolate, hot, and I was a 15-minute walk from my home, so I couldn't immediately blot and do all these things, and there's no staining. I think partially because of the natural variation and the browny beige color of this yarn, but it washed out so easily. I didn't have to do anything particularly extraordinary. I rinsed with cold water and then soaked with wool wash, and it turned out totally fine. So yeah, I like it a lot. I really like Green Mountain Spinnery's yarns. I'm really happy I got to go to the mill with my friend in Vermont. Next up is my Cargill, the Cargill that is very famous. The sweater that launched Rebecca of the Crayabea podcast's design career, her very successful, prolific design career thus far. This is the Cargill. I was one of the testers. This is size 3. I knit it in Knitting for Olive, merino in, I want to say soft pink, and the mohair in rose clay. I don't remember. It'll be on both my Ravelry page for it and the podcast where I talk about this. This was so much fun to knit. The back of the neck is a bit of a beast, and if I didn't have the group chat with all the other testers, I think I would have really struggled with it. But this pattern, this texture pattern, is so much fun to knit. It really felt like this knit itself. It flew off the needles. I really enjoyed it once I figured out what was going on with the back of the neck, connected around the neckline, and was able to go. I love this color. I love the fabric that they make. I think Rebecca did a good job of designing this with a looser texture for a DK to balance out the heft of this texture, and I like it a lot. It's also, I think, my most viewed Ravelry page of all time, which is funny. And I wish, and I wear this quite a bit, but not as much as I thought that I would. And I think that was, for me, an interesting moment to note that sometimes I love knitting things, but they're not the things I reach for the most, whereas there were definitely moments of knitting the field day cardigan that felt like a slog, but I wear it all the time, and I feel like emotionally attached to that cardigan. This was so much fun. I knit bracelet length sleeves. I have pretty comprehensive notes on my Ravelry as well as in the video where I talk about it, but I didn't really make any modifications because this was a test, and I just loved the original design. I think it's flowy. I think it's flattering. It's relaxed a lot. You can see it's a little bit sheer. You can see the line where my yoga pants start. I do sometimes struggle with wearing it. Sometimes I consider cropping it and making it almost like a feel kind of vintage inspired blouse with a crop and wearing it more with my skirts, because I don't always love how it looks plain. It looks kind of funky with a French tuck, but then it's a lot of fabric to tuck all the way in. So sometimes I feel like it's a little bulky around my midsection. I don't usually let that stop me from wearing it. This is another one that I wear to the office quite a bit, especially in the winter. And I like that it's knit at something like a 19 stitch gauge, because much more than that I think would be too warm for me with a mohair sweater. Also, at the time of knitting this was my most expensive sweater. I was so excited about this pattern that I balled out and got the Knitting for Olive merino and mohair, and this is my first time working with Knitting for Olive. Unfortunately, I do like it, and I don't find this mohair wildly irritating. But on the days where I go to the grocery store after work and I'm carrying home bags of groceries, I take this off, and from the friction of the bags and on my shoulders and on my chest, when I take this off, my entire chest is like red and irritated. So mohair just kind of isn't something that my skin loves. I still wear it because it's not making me break out in hives. And when I'm just sitting here, I'm not uncomfortable, but I am, much like many of my compatriots, my fellow YouTubers, not prioritizing mohair knits moving forward, or at least not on things that are on my chest and not things that are knit at a tight gauge. But yeah, I like this. Really hold on tight for the back of the neck. And I'm a bit of a broken record, but my takeaways from this, where I started just making things that fit me better, that I like to wear, that feel representative of my personal style, and that make me happy and were a lot of fun to knit, and this is another key example of that. And last but not least, I have my Lakes sweater, also by Ozetta Knitwear, which I made in Knit Picks, simply wool worsted, in the color Winnie, I think, which I got on sale and made this overall a $35 or $45 Canadian project, including the pattern. And again, budget project, one of my favorites. I wear this a lot. Took me 2 weeks to make. From the second I saw Ozetta release the tester call, I knew I wanted to make this eventually. I chose a very similar color. I love the fit. I love the look of this really wide saddle shoulder. It feels almost like a shoulder pad in a way that I think is a fun detail. I like that line that goes down the side. I love this chunky wide neckband. I love the amount of ease. I can wear a full t-shirt or long sleeve underneath this and be comfortable in the deep winter months. I think it's a good neutral that suits me. I can wear my whole spin outfit underneath and be okay. And I had to resist buying yarn to make a second one. After finishing this, that is how much I love it. So that's everything I made this year. Overall reflections again. One, more blue than I expected, or when I think back on the color palettes I choose, I think of a lot of green and a lot of gray. This year had a lot more pink and blue than I think I thought I did. Here they are in some of their glory, but I definitely continued the Rachel Loves Green train. I also famously wear and enjoy pink, and you can definitely see that in my choices. I think looking at all of these, laid out on my bed as I did my costume changes off screen, it hit me how much I really went for softer colors and pastels, and not even I did go for more neutrals, but not even necessarily neutrals, but just softer, brighter colors this year. And maybe I should not read too much into that, but this is the only dark or moody one. And I chose this yarn the year before and knit it mostly the year before. I don't know if this is a symptom of my mental health improving and overall circumstances in life improving, but I do think the change into lighter, brighter spring neutrals that make me think of like renewal and new beginnings is indicative of a change to a better life for me. 2020 and 2021 were difficult years for me. I will not bore you with the details. They were difficult years for a lot of us, but I see in my projects from that time a lot of moodier and darker colors. And I've always liked pink and green, but now I'm going for softer pinks and softer greens. And I think that just makes sense. I also have expanded my ability to do a lot of stuff, and just kind of I just continue to love knitting and wanting to learn more about knitting, wanting to grow as a knitter in my techniques and my abilities and my skills, and continue wanting to share it with you guys. So thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video, as repetitive and rambly as it was. What are your favorite things that you knit in the past year? What do you want to make more of? What makes you happy? When you look at everything you make, do you also see a defined color palette, or are you more eclectic and more adventurous than me? Yeah, I'm hoping that you and your loved ones are happy and healthy, and we'll talk again soon. Okay.